All right, I will try to speed through this as much as I can.
Get your 8 minutes.
All right.
No problem.
Hey, where'd it go?
Is it on the...
Put it on the desk. Oh, here we go. All right. So thanks for having me. My name is Alex. I work with Action Against Hunger, and I'm based in Senegal. And I'm going to talk today about participatory mapping with nomadic herders in West Africa. So a little bit about who we work for. It's humanitarian response NGO. We focus on food emergencies. We have about 7,000 staff in 50 different countries. We focus mostly on nutrition, food security, and my office is here, West Africa. Specifically, my department covers disaster risk reduction. So my job is to basically do all the programming for programs that anticipate major disasters. And in this case, it's drought. Now, I work in the West African Sahel. The Sahel is the space between Senegal and Chad. Important thing you need to know, it's big, it's hot, and it's pretty dry. On the bottom right, you can see the precipitation anomalies of the past 60 years. We can notice that it's getting more and more volatile. For pastoralists, nomadic herders, people whose livelihoods depend on animals, they need to find pasture and water with the seasons. Now, if you can see the map, you can see on the graph on the right, this is getting harder and harder to do every year because there's less water and, by extension, less grass. The seasons themselves are quite violent normally. So this here is a spot in the center of Mali in Mopti. This is the exact same lake. You can see the 3 trees on the left-hand side of the lake. This is September. This is May on the dry season. So wet season September, dry season is May. This is a normal year. This is not a drought period. This is how it is on a regular basis. So you can imagine when we get into a drought, how much more precarious and dangerous that situation gets for people like here on the left who need to find water and pasture on a daily basis. This is the Lake of Canal in the east of Senegal. Again, a normal year. So you can see the lake stopping in the dry season and expanding as the rains come in August. And then we're in November, and it's dropping, and then it goes back to almost nothing. So again, this is all just to say that the situation is pretty precarious for these people who depend on these natural resources on a daily basis. Now, so we developed what we call the pastoral early warning system, where we use a mix of remote sensing and field data that goes into this technical black box and spits out drought information for pastoral communities, so for the herders themselves, and for humanitarian actors, other NGOs like myself, like the one I work for. Now, finding drought is not that hard. Remote sensing data has gotten pretty good, and thanks to the European Union, now you can get about 30, 40 years of remote sensing data open, free, and pretty easy to access. This is a drought map. This is biomass vegetation production. I won't go into the details of how this is made, even though I think this is pretty cool, and I really like doing this, but basically all you need to know is red bad, green good. This is of the most recent. Yeah, red bad, green good, you know. And this is what we are looking at currently. This is the end of the last rainy season. So we know what the general situation is across West Africa. But when you're planning a response to a drought, when you're planning the distribution of food, the distribution of cash, you can't just sort of drop it in all the red space. The red space, that's probably about the size of, I don't know. No, it's pretty big. It's, about 3,000 miles across, up and down, 3,000 kilometers across, up and down of red space in the West. You can't just target the whole place. You need to know where are the pastoralists, where are the herders going. Because as they move their herds, you need to be able to pre-position stocks ahead of time. So, as a result, this is where participatory GIS comes into place. Originally, we had a system where we used GPS trackers to follow herds as they moved and figure out exactly where the points of concentration were, where we could meet them before they got there to distribute animal feed, provide veterinary care. But that didn't work. That was a big mess. So instead, we focused on sketch mapping. So on the top left corner, you can see we are starting out a sketch map. We have a process where we gather herders from different herding organizations together, and we make a map, region by region. So this is the north of Senegal, a very important area for herders. So, we start out where we establish context for everybody. We say, okay, here are everybody lists the main forage boreholes, the main wells they know of. And then we draw a map. And everybody participates, everybody draws together, everybody gets a marker, and what's great is you get a consensus from everybody. Everybody argues over whether or not this is actually the route. And that's actually sometimes even more interesting than the actual product, is seeing what people are arguing over, what's significant and what's not. And then we scan it. QGIS is a great plugin for digitizing sketch maps. We scan it, and then we put it over that drought map you saw. So, if we can see people going to a big red spot, we know that, to put it technically, shit's going to hit the fan. And as a result, we need to pre-position stocks in these places. And to sort of give you an example of what that looks like, how we use, this is a map of east of Niger, on the border of Nigeria. This is 2015, when the Boko Haram crisis was flaring up at its peak. So, there's also a herding area. This is a place that depends entirely on herding for livelihoods. So we knew that the herders were being displaced, but we didn't know how, so we had this sketch mapping exercise. Now on the blue, those are the zones of concentration where the herders will bring their animals in a normal period. The green is where they go when the pasture runs out in those places, which is pretty quick. Problem is these areas were all being controlled by Boko Haram. They could not bring their animals there. Typically, you don't want to bring everything you own in a spot that's controlled by rebels. So they had to go here, in these red spots. And because we had... I really just wanted to show the... Yeah. I'm not going to lie. The thing I really like about this slide is these moving cows. But we were able to identify where these spots were and where they were going. This allowed us to pre-position food aid. So to quickly wrap it up, this is what the program looks like. I guess to wrap up what we learned, the first thing is, a friend of mine once said, check yourself before you tech yourself. And we learned that sometimes the best tech is no tech. And this marvelous GPS program that had been proposed by a technical partner turned out to be far less efficient than sketch mapping, than just getting a map and having people draw on it. Second is we've been able to do everything using open source technology, and I think for a community organization, they really shouldn't pay for software licenses. You can fight me afterwards if you want about this. But it's very important for us that when we build these sorts of systems, that we can easily transfer them. We publish the data online, we publish the code, the algorithms online, so that our partners, in fact the organizations that do the herding actually were in the process of transferring a lot of that to them now. And that they are actually going to be they're going to be doing most of the GIS on this pretty soon. And Amanda, you actually had a question about inking and about the whole idea about whether or not you can do permission for that. What we actually ended up doing was we just laminated the maps and used dry erase markers. But that was interesting in that at first, the very first ones we did have this sort of issue about, well, okay, do I have the right to make this map? Because can I speak for my organization? Can I speak for my clan? Can I speak for my herding group? But when people sort of realized that there was supposed to be a consensus built, it got pretty quickly. And I'm going over my time. I'm so sorry. All right. Thank you very much. This is a picture of the last group that made it. We don't smile because we're not supposed to, I guess. But this is the last group that made the map that you saw. So thank you very much.